So upon preparing for what I'm going to share with you guys today, I came across a quote from Robert Swan, who is an environmental activist, and it said, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it." And this really resonated with me. I'll tell you why. Today there are about 7.5 billion people on our Earth, and we're really feeling the effects of these numbers. We're getting lack of resources and overpopulation issues, and while there's no cure-all to this, we do have individual choices, which I think Robert was referring to. So today I'm going to talk to you about veganism and what veganism is basically straying away from all animal products. So no meat, no dairy, nothing that comes from another living creature. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this through animal activists, but I'm here to talk to you about the other side of it. And that is how a vegan lifestyle is a healthier option for humanity as a whole and not just the animals. So first off, a vegan lifestyle helps us to conserve water. As many of you know, countries everywhere are suffering from lack of clean water, and a lot of this is due to animal farming. According to Water Footprint Network, which is a global company that tracks the consumption of water and its effects on our Earth, it takes 2,000 gallons of water to raise a single pound of beef, whereas in comparison, it only takes 200 gallons of water to raise a pound of wheat. And a lot of you may say, like, oh, well, cows are big animals, like what about chickens and pigs? And you're right. It does take significantly less water to raise a pig or a chicken, but it still is significantly more than it takes to raise vegetables or any grains. Further than that, we also have large amounts of animal waste that is going into our water supply. So farmers get millions of waste every year, and they put them into something called slurry lagoons, which are basically these giant holes that hold basically all this waste, and they are hoping to turn it into manure, but there's so much that it's leaking into our water supply and killing the fish and the water ecosystems. And the soil that the manure that sits on the soil breeds bacteria. Many of you guys heard of nitric acid rain. This is one of the ways that it's formed. So all the bacteria that is sitting mixes with other toxins in the air, and it goes up into our atmosphere and comes back down to the earth in the form of acid rain, and it's killing our forests, further contaminating our water, and also killing clean soil that we have. Which brings me to my second point of using the available soil that we have to combat hunger. Now, the vegan lifestyle combats hunger by using the land that we already have to feed humans instead of animals. A study done at the University of Minnesota in 2013 on agricultural yields found that 36% of the calories that we harvest are going specifically to animals that we are just going to consume. But it takes a lot more calories to feed a cow than it does a human. And we don't get those calorie backs when the cow is cut up and given to us. So in this way, we're getting a negative investment, and we're not using our resources effectively. And this is all for the mass production of meat, when we could be harvesting alternative proteins such as soybeans and rice that is just as nutrient dense and could be feeding millions more people as compared to thousands of cows that it's feeding. And it also reduces the need to cut down our forests, which is happening everywhere, and brings me to my third point of cleaning the air. So it's no secret that greenhouse gases are greatly affecting our Earth. It's contributing to climate change and global warming, and a lot of us want to point to cars or factories, but a lot of us don't realize that a huge contribution to this is animal farming. Some of the biggest gases that are being emitted are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And Suzanne Rice, who is a policy studies professor at the University of Kansas, wrote "What's Meat Got to Do with It?" And in her article, she wrote that one of the most powerful emissions is nitrous oxide. And 65% of the nitrous oxide in the air is coming from animal farms. And this is from manure and fossil fuel combustions. They also have methane, which is, she also notes, 37% is coming from animal farms. And methane comes from digestion. So when all the animals are putting that millions of waste into our water and our soil, methane is also coming out and ruining our air. Finally, we have carbon dioxide, which we have all heard of reducing our carbon footprint. A large part of this carbon is coming from deforestation. We all learned that photosynthesis, the trees bring in the carbon and they turn it into oxygen and clean air. So when we cut down these trees, all this carbon that these trees are holding in is getting re-released into our air, and we're losing that potential to create more clean oxygen for us. And this positive impact of clean air is what we need, but we're losing that with the deforestation. And so this will slow climate change and reduce our footprint. And while there's 7.5 billion people on this earth, and our individual efforts may seem minuscule, the facts are undeniable. By leading this lifestyle that strays from massive and unnecessary production of animals, we have the potential to build a better future that is healthier and more sustainable for future generations to come. Thank you.
I can't use vegetables. I just can't. I just have really picky taste buds. I'll eat fruits just fine.
All right, Cassandra, the proposition's identified, but this is an issue that comes up quite a bit with speeches. People forget this is supposed to be an argument, not an informative speech, so you want to be careful about the language, because you start off and say, I'm going to show how a vegan lifestyle would produce a healthier lifestyle for the planet. I forget the exact phrasing of it. When you do that, it sounds like you're giving me an informative speech. You want the declarative sentence. A vegan lifestyle will do this, not how a vegan lifestyle will do this. People do that frequently. They turn it into a question. It's maybe a passive thing that they do, so they don't seem like they're in your face. But I don't want to hear an informative speech. I want to hear your argument. What's your position on this? And there's got to be dispute on it, so that's why that it needs to be phrased that way. And you did that I think, in a couple of supporting points also. I did think there was a good preview of what the supporting points were going to be. No, I lied. I suddenly remembered. I lied. There wasn't a preview of the supporting points that were going to be there, but you did identify them as you were in those particular spots. And the thing that's a little bit problematic is the same sort of thing. They're not really phrased as claims. I just know what the topic is. You start talking about how we all know that there are shortages of water, and I'm going, I don't know that. I don't have any data that tells me that there's not a lot of water, that the problems with water are because we don't have enough. That's an assumption that you've given. I think you need to offer some proof on that. Later on, there's a similar kind of thing where there's a link in an argument that's missing, and I think you need to put those things in there. You did have some good data about how much water is required to produce the amount of beef, but that I think is kind of isolated without having other information about what our water resources are. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, it might take 2,000 gallons to raise a pound of beef, but if we have, I don't know, 100 trillion gallons of water, then it doesn't seem like that's that big a deal. I have no way of making a comparison because I don't have any of that sort of information in the argument. There's an assertion about the acid rain, and I don't think that you're making this stuff up, but there's no source that's being presented there, so you want to be more consistent about that. Same thing with the waste issue. You talk about how the waste ends up in the water and polluting things and killing fish. And I'm going, oh, where's this proof? Where's the example? Where's an authority? Where is some statistical information to show that? Again, I've heard this information before because I've heard these arguments, but I'm not seeing the source citation in your presentation, and that's a little bit problematic. There's some statistical data that talks about how many calories we're getting, from the effort that we're putting in here, how we've got this kind of deficit as a result of what's going on. And I thought that was a good start on the argument. It needs to be developed a little bit more, but the notion that we put in a lot of energy and time on this is, I think you do demonstrate that pretty well. The percentage of methane in the atmosphere from animals being linked to any particular harm is, I think, a little ambiguous, since methane and CO2 are produced by all living things. We've got you're saying, well, it's from animals, but is it from the animals that are specific here? I think there's some evidence that talks about that, but it wasn't quite clear. And what difference would it make if we had none of those animals? Would we suddenly have air that was clean. And by the way, what's the harm of the methane in the atmosphere? I got something about the nitrous oxides and a little bit about the CO2, although that's kind of hinted at, but the methane seems like it's largely assumed that there's some problem there, and I'm not sure what that problem is. The other issue that I was going to mention was the deforestation issue at the end. There's no explanation about how deforestation is related to consuming animals. I think I know what the link is, but it's not presented in the argument, and so as a consequence, it's one of those things where, well, there's a chain here, and there are a couple of links that are missing, and going from, if we didn't use animals, we wouldn't have deforestation, and therefore the CO2 issue would not be a problem. That's a jump that can't be made without the intervening point there. So I think that's missing. I think you do a nice job speaking to the audience for the most part. You feel a little bit like you're rushing, but you've got a lot of information in the presentation. It didn't seem like it was anxiety. It was mostly just trying to get the data in the amount of time that you had. All right, thank you.